We come today to the central verse in the epistle to the Romans. It's funny that this verse is put so much up front in the letter. It's verse 17, chapter 1. I think St. Paul does this, puts this interpretive letter first, is because he wants us to see it as an interpretive principle for the rest of the letter. He wants us to see that this is the point of the letter. Some scholars say that the rest of Romans is an exposition of this verse 17 here in chapter 1. So this verse is central. It's central to the meaning of the epistle, and it's central to the meaning of what a Christian is. We have to understand this verse and the meaning of it. It's essential for our understanding of Christian thought and the Christian gospel. And second, it's important to understand this verse in respect to church history, for it was this verse that Martin Luther realized was the center of the gospel as he was teaching through Romans, and he was lecturing on Romans and expounding Romans to his students. Martin Luther came to the realization of what this verse was really saying. It was saying, he realized, that the righteousness of God is a gift, that the righteousness of God is an accomplishment, it's an act that God gives to the Christian. The righteousness of God, as the theologians say, is imputed to the Christian. It's like Abraham, when Abraham believed, it was reckoned to him as righteousness, reckoned to him. The Christian is seen in the righteousness of God, or with the righteousness of Christ, when they come by faith. And this is the issue. So Martin Luther saw that one isn't a Christian because he's righteous. He's righteous because he's made a Christian. A person isn't moral, and then he becomes a Christian. He first becomes a Christian by God's sovereign grace, and then he becomes moral or upright or pure. This is the point. The order and the priority of God's sovereignty is essential. It's crucial that we get this, because St. Paul realized that God's sovereign grace was first turns us into a Christian. First, the righteousness of God is given to us and imputed to us, and then we're seen as one of God's people. That's what's so important here. So, well, we better read this verse. Let's read this verse 17, chapter 1. Here it is. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. The essential thing to see here is that the verse is about the righteousness of God. That's the point of the verse. It's talking about the righteousness of God. And we can see the righteousness of God as an attribute of God, as a characteristic of God, or we can see it as an action, an accomplishment of God. And this is the two ways to see it here. And really, I believe we can see it as both ways. But first, we can see the righteousness of God as an attribute or a characteristic of him. He's righteous. He's pure. He's got wisdom. He's infinite. All these wonderful attributes of God. And one of them is the righteousness of God. Well, we can see it like that. And it's fine to see it like that in this verse. The righteousness of God is his character. But there's another way to see the phrase, the righteousness of God, and to interpret it. And that is to see the righteousness of God as a gift that he gives to others. The righteousness of God that he imputes, or that he puts on the life of another. So that we say that person has the righteousness of God about him. He's pure, he's sanctified, it's obvious he has the righteousness of God upon him. This is the way, this second way, that Paul is using it primarily here in verse 17. The righteousness of God has been revealed, meaning the righteousness of God has been made known. The righteousness of God in the gospel has been preached to people. They have believed in it, and the righteousness of God has been made theirs. This is what the meaning of the phrase is here in verse 17. Let me read it again to you with that meaning. For there in the gospel, he's referring to the gospel. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Well, let's look at this verse in three ways here. First of all, it is a righteousness to be believed in. It is a righteousness to be believed in. You've got to believe this righteousness. You've got to receive it. And it is a righteousness of God that he offers to you and I, and we have to receive it. When we receive it by faith, from faith to faith, then, of course, it becomes ours, and we become a child of God. That is the only way we become children of God, when we have the righteousness of God upon us. And that's what he offers us. That's what he gives us here. It is a righteousness to be believed in. And when we believe in this righteousness, we understand God better. When we believe that God has given us this righteousness and we receive it unto ourselves, well, why then this righteousness becomes understandable. We become spiritual people. We're not natural people who look upon the gospel as foolishness. We're now spiritual people who understand the things of the Spirit and the Spirit of God and God himself. We understand the things of God now because we've received this righteousness of God upon us. It is a righteousness to be believed in. Then, as I said earlier, it's a righteousness that is accomplished. It is a righteousness that is given. We must see this. It is a righteousness that is given to his people. We are righteous because he decided that we're righteous. We're not righteous because we decided to be righteous. We are chosen first. God chooses us before we choose him. He puts his righteousness upon us and makes us Christians. And then we're righteous in his eyes, clothed in his white robes, enabled to come into his presence because we have the righteousness of Christ upon us. It is a righteousness that is to be believed in, and it is a righteousness that is given, that is bestowed upon a person. This is so important because people again and again say to me and say to you, I'm sure, all these terrible things are happening to me. I must have done something wrong. Or they say, oh, this wonderful thing happened to me. I must have been living righteously. They have the assumption in their mind that if they live right, they will be blessed. If they live in a sinful way, they will be troubled. They will be given difficulties. They have this idea in their mind, the idea that they earn their standing with God. They earn their misstanding with God. They earn this. And this is not what the Bible teaches. What the Bible teaches is that your standing with God is up to God. One's righteousness and one's righteous state with God is up to his sovereign choice. And the Lord chooses us. The Lord draws us with his everlasting love. He draws us toward himself, as we have seen in Romans already. And he draws us by his righteousness, puts his righteousness upon us, and we are his people. And then, yes, blessings may come to us. Maybe blessings may not come to us, but it is all God's sovereign purpose, and we must see the priority of God's sovereignty and God's choice here. The righteousness of God is put upon a person, and that person becomes a Christian, one of his children, not the other way around. We don't somehow earn the status of becoming his child, earn the state of grace with him, and then he puts his righteousness upon us. No, he puts his righteousness upon us first, and then we become a child of God. This is important. Well, lastly, I want you to see that it is a righteousness to be lived in. It is a righteousness to be believed in. It is a righteousness that is given to us. And then it is a righteousness to live. It is a righteousness to live by. And that's what we have in the final clause of this verse. I'll read it to you again. For therein is the righteousness of God revealed from faith to faith. As it is written, the just shall live by faith. This was the phrase that got the attention of Martin Luther and got the attention of Calvin, got the attention of these great reformers, and they realized that it wasn't that we earn our right and our state before God and we earn our right to come into his presence. It's that he gives us that right first as his sovereign choice, and then we can come into his presence. But here we notice from this verse that the stress is put on live. For the righteous shall live by faith. They will live by faith. This righteousness is a righteousness that is to be lived. It is not something that we accept in and of ourselves and we are happy that we have gotten this righteousness and that we're proud that we have it and that the Lord has given it to us. No, this righteousness is to transform our life from here and now in this life. It's to transform us. This is what it's to do. And God gives us this righteousness to live in. So we live the precepts of God. We live the principles of God that we read in the Bible. We live the Bible and we live the Christian faith. We live our faith. We live in righteousness as we live our faith. And this is what we're supposed to do. We're not just supposed to think that we have this faith and now everything is set and we're protected and we're going to be blessed. Is that God gives us this righteousness to transform us here and now in this life, that we have another being, a different kind of living, a different kind of existence with the Lord Jesus Christ. It is a righteousness, you see, that he gives us. And we must remember that. It's a righteousness that is believed in. It must be believed in and received. It is a righteousness that is given to us. It's a gift. It's given to us by God's sovereign act. And it's a righteousness that, of course, we're to live in. We're to live in every day as we live our daily Christian life. We live in this righteousness. It is ours, but we live it out. This is what we must remember. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.